I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. During Senate floor remarks on Tuesday, Senator Jerry Moran spoke in support of the Honoring Our PACT Act. Republicans last week blocked the long-awaited legislation. Moran worked with Democratic Senator Jon Tester on the bill, which would ensure health care for veterans exposed to toxic substances. The Kansas Republican said, quote, "Freedom is not free. There's always a cost to war, and we need to remind ourselves that that cost is not fully paid when the war ends." Moran urged his colleagues to vote yes when the bill was voted on again with added amendments. On Tuesday night, the PACT Act passed in an 86-11 vote in the Senate.
Mr. President, thank you for the recognition. In just a few minutes, in fact, maybe I should say finally, in just a few minutes, the Senate will vote once again on the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson Honoring Our Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act of 2022, known as the PACT Act. Thousands of veterans who answered their call to serve after the terrorist attacks of 9/11 suffered the consequences to their health of exposure to open burn pits. Many of these veterans are simultaneously experiencing a battle with the VA, a battle with their health conditions, now a battle with the Department of Veterans Affairs to gain access to health care and the benefits that they desperately need and in reality earned and deserve. For more than 2 years, I've worked with my colleagues on the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, its chairman, Senator Tester, our colleagues in the House and Senate, multiple VSOs, veterans across the country, and veterans in Kansas, and their families on how we can provide toxic exposed veterans the health care benefits that they deserve. Chairman Tester and I made a commitment to each other to get to this point today, and we've had a couple of procedural hurdles, but despite that, I am pleased that we have still brought this bill to the floor in a bipartisan manner. Our veterans have waited long enough, and it is time to pass the Heath Robinson PACT Act. Not only will this legislation provide long overdue health care and benefits to the 3.5 million post-9/11 veterans who are exposed to burn pits, but this legislation will deliver care for all generations of veterans, including Vietnam veterans and those who served in Southeast Asia suffering from the exposure to Agent Orange. No legislation is perfect. Is this bill the way I would draft it if I was the only person writing the bill? It is not. This is a legislative process that involves a give and take, and we will still have more work to do once the legislation is signed into law. I remain committed to working with the Department of Veterans Affairs, with our veteran service organizations, with individual veterans and their families, with my colleagues here in the Senate, both Republican and Democratic, to make certain that this legislation is effective for veterans and that the unintended consequences from this legislation are addressed. Once we pass legislation, the work continues because it then has to be implemented by the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I know from experience that that is a challenge. And this bill in particular, the magnitude, the number of veterans affected, the amount of resources necessary, the demand for care that will arise under this legislation, the demand for benefits that arises under this legislation, all will make its implementation a significant challenge, but we are ready and able to make certain that the intended results, while there's been lots of demand that we pass legislation, really what we're after is intended results. And those intended results are that our veterans receive the care and benefit that they deserve. There is no doubt that the cost of caring for our veterans is high. And the truth is, freedom is not free. There's always a cost to war, and we need to remind ourselves that that cost is not fully paid when the war ends. We are now on the verge of honoring that commitment to Americans, veterans, and their families. I support this legislation. I support moving forward with a vote in favor of cloture. I am pleased, something that we thought might have happened earlier, I'm pleased that there will be amendment votes before we get to that final passage. But I expect and urge my colleagues, regardless of the outcome of the amendment votes, to continue to move this bill forward by adopting this opportunity to pass the bill, by taking advantage of the circumstance we have now worked our way to get to. And now that we are at this point, I hope that today it passes, the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson Honoring Our PACT Act, that it passes and with the presidential signature becomes law. To my colleagues who've worked on this, I express my gratitude to my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats on the Committee on Veterans Affairs. I appreciate the opportunity I have to be in leadership in that committee and to work every day on behalf of those who served our nation. Let's pass this legislation. Let's deliver the most comprehensive toxic exposure package to veterans in our country's history. And with that plea and suggestion, Mr. President, I yield back.